Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Slingin Leather, Southern California's official combat sports show. I'm Scuba Steve,
Chino Hernandez.
and happy belated New Year to you all. Chino, the layoff was too long, and I'm so happy to be back, man. I'm very excited for this episode.
Absolutely. It has been quite a while. You and I have both had our own like busyness behind the scenes. So yeah, it's time to get back and yeah, let's talk about fighting.
Man, life happens, and we're just here to roll with the punches, aren't we?
Yep, absolutely.
As you all probably know at this point, UFC 297 just wrapped up this past weekend, and we got an incredible main event featuring Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis to talk about, as well as some very compelling results in the main card that have title implications and number one contendership on the line. And we got to discuss all of this. And first up, we have Arnold Almighty Allen versus Movsar Evloev, as Movsar Evloev did defeat Arnold Allen via unanimous decision. And for Evloev, this was an incredible striking showcase, and especially with a lot of the Russian fighters that are coming from the Dagestan area, everyone loves to hail their grappling. But Islam Makhachev and some of the Nurmagomedov brothers have shown that they've got striking too, and I think that this level of diversity is incredible. And they're really starting to show they're not a one-trick pony type of camp. When it comes to these fighters that are really picking up striking as a second art or picking it up supplementally, do you think that there's a way that they could sort of shift the narrative, Chino?
That's a great question. You know, it's definitely never too late to pick up like a new style of fighting. A lot of people, I guess, get complaints, especially Russian fighters, of being one dimensional. All they know is wrestling, right? But I do believe that I mean, there's been great example, like you mentioned, Islam Makhachev. He's picked up or not just grappling, but striking now, and he's been able to use it in those fights. And actually pretty well. I mean, he knocked out Volkanovski with a leg kick. So that I mean that caught me off. If you were to tell me that Islam was gonna knock out Volkanovski with a leg kick, I would have never believed you. So it just goes to show that yeah, they can definitely pick it up. It's never, especially with MMA, because you and I both know with boxing, you have to really have those fundamentals down. But with MMA, you can kind of slide and be well rounded.
Definitely. Definitely. And with that head kick, I mean, that if, again, I'm right there with you. If you were to have told me that Islam was going to get it done in the first round via head kick, I would have told you you were insane. And I think that this is a great trajectory for Dagestani MMA to be going. And I mean, it just showed in this fight. Although many believed it was a definitive win for Evloev, for some reason people thought rounds 1 and 3 went to Arnold Allen. I wouldn't go that far because Evloev did very well at making his takedowns fruitful. I mean, he did do a lot of damage on the ground. Mind you, it wasn't enough to bloody up Arnold Allen, but he made those worth something. We've seen in MMA scoring that they don't value the takedown as much if you don't do anything with it. If you're not attacking
Mhm.
with submissions, if you're not laying down ground and pound, if you're not trying to go for something, they mean absolutely nothing. And we'll get onto that about the main event later. But as I said, as we were preparing for this, for some reason I had scored the third round on Twitter for Evloev. I mean, based on the results and based on the replays, I mean, I will absolutely give that one to Allen. I was off base there, but I still scored it 29-28 for Evloev, and I feel like this was an incredible win for him. Arnold Allen was at one point an undefeated prospect that was a prodigal son for British MMA. Before Tom Aspinall came along, before Leon Edwards came along, he was the guy. And being put in that spot is great and all, but they expect you to keep it going. And especially in boxing, there's a lot of sensitivity with each win. I mean, each loss, should
Yeah,
I say.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
once you lose that, oh, especially with Ryan Garcia, what did that do to him?
I mean, we all know he still has that popularity, but the hype behind him is kind of died down right
Hmm.
now. People kind of have a lot of doubts for Ryan Garcia, especially with his future. We don't really know how he's gonna face the new challenges besides Gervonta Davis with the Devin Haney, a Teofimo Lopez. We don't really know how he handles that pressure. So, you know. especially in boxing, like you mentioned, a loss is really, it could end your career. So yeah,
I mean, just on the side note, I think Isak Cruz could take care of Ryan Garcia too. I mean, that dude's an
yeah,
absolute maniac. But I mean, I I just kind of know that when you're at that spot versus when you're not, it kind of hurts your reputation. It hurts the hype a little bit. And Arnold
definitely.
Allen did suffer his third loss in MMA, while Movsar Evloev remained undefeated. He's currently 18 to 0. And after Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilya Topuria is dealt with and finished, this dude's next in line. And this
Mm,
dude showed how well rounded he is. Everyone loves to hate on him. You love to go to decisions. You never go to finish the fight. That sometimes is out of your control. That's something that potentially the punches don't land exactly where you want them to. You don't hit the button like a lot of people are able to. But when you're getting wins, does it really matter? I was just having this discussion with another huge boxing fan friend of mine, where a lot of the old heads sort of went for that KO. But as the sport of boxing is developed, a lot of people want to pace themselves and they want to go to that decision. I don't see this as a negative thing. Do you?
I definitely don't, because you gotta take into consideration their mental health, like their physical health as well. I mean, you've seen what's happened with like Muhammad Ali, Parkinson's, and it deteriorates your mind, your brain. So a lot of fighters are very now well aware of this health issue when it comes to like getting hit in the head. So, I mean, if you could get millions for, just jabbing, staying outside, then I think that's a win. So
I mean, a lot of these guys grew up watching Floyd. A lot of these guys grew up
yeah,
watching Nick Lewis. A lot of these guys that would prefer to stay on the outside and have that legalized bank robbing sort of style where it's like
yeah.
you are keeping your health while doing that. And I think Mosbar Abloyev uh, is not in a bad spot for not going and finishing these fights. I think if anything, it's doing long term good for him in the sense where
Yeah.
he's not going to suffer a lot of the fate of some people like in MMA, Chuck Liddell, someone who's not really the same. I mean, we still love Chuck Liddell. We still will agree that he is one of the absolute pioneers of this sport, but you just hearing him talk now, especially with other guys from the 80s from boxing, like his name's blanking on me.
There's Joe
I'll talk to him too.
Frazier. That's one big one where his speech is very slurred, very, very
Mhm.
slurred.
Oh, Tommy
Um,
Hearns. That's who I was thinking
Tommy
of.
Hearns, that's
Yeah,
another one.
exactly.
Yep.
I watched that Kings documentary. He don't sound the same, but I mean, that's neither here nor there because we got way more fights to talk about. We got Chris Curtis defeating Mark Andre Barriel by split decision, and this was a stand-up battle from bell to bell. And especially since Chris Curtis is training with Sean Strickland, I think his striking defense is something that has improved in strides because in this fight, his defense was excellent. And in each round, his opponent threw more than he did, but landed less. And the
Interesting.
discrepancy was not close. I mean, was very close. Chris Curtis was still throwing high volume, and that is indicative of the style that's currently being festered at Extreme Couture, the gym they both train at.
Yep.
And you know, their stand-up defense is excellent, and they threw incredible volume in each round. But a lot of people were sort of scoffing at this fight. They were saying it wasn't very, I mean, it wasn't very exciting. The people that I was sitting at a table with were wondering when the action was going to start, and I was like, "Are you watching what's happening? Are you watching what's happening?" Because Chris Curtis was looking excellent on the feet. Sure, he got hit with some shots because Marc Andre Barriel could crack, but I have to, I mean, elaborating on what we were just talking about, when you're in the pocket and you're landing a lot of shots and your opponent is also coming forward and landing a lot of shots, what would make anyone think that that's not exciting or fun? They're going after it. Have you ever had someone say that to you or express that sort of sentiment to you?
Yeah, definitely. There's not any fights that I can think of off the top of my head at the moment, but there have been times where I've heard people say, this isn't so exciting. Actually, no, I can think of one right now. Devin Haney versus Lomachenko. I remember watching that, and people were saying, when are they gonna start hitting each other? And I'm like, dude, they're hitting each other right now. And I mean, for me at least, I thought that fight was fantastic. I mean, it had a lot of action from rounds 1 to round 12, and we got to see how Devin Haney handles pressure against Lomachenko. And Lomachenko was phenomenal. He's able to use the ring very well, his angles and all of those things, and his punch output is just unlike any other. He's able to put combinations from left to right. I mean, you'll be seeing six of him at the same time. So Devin handled it well, and yeah, so that's definitely one fight that I can think of that relates to this.
Because we're not talking about a Shakur Stevenson fight here. Again, love the dude. He's incredible to watch too. But as Rolly Romero said, he put everyone to sleep in the entire arena except for his opponent. And
Yep.
I think that at least if you're standing in the pocket and at least going for offense and going for the knockout, even though it didn't happen, you can't say it's a boring fight. That's just
Yeah.
my opinion. Maybe I was like, maybe we just appreciate this thing a little differently. You know what I mean? When it's a stand-up war where we could see that both guys are going for it, but it never happens, at least the
Hmm.
thought's there. At least the
Yeah.
actions are there. That's I mean, I'm sure that's your opinion too, but that's my personal opinion.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
although this was a split decision win for Marc-Andre Barriault, round two was incredibly close, and I did score that for Barriault. I think he did enough in that round. He landed slightly more effective shots than Chris Curtis did in that round. But everyone, I mean, a lot of people were saying that Barriault did enough in one or three to warrant a decision win, and I simply don't agree. I think
Mm,
that Chris Curtis especially looked great in that third round. He really turned on the gas at the end, and it makes me wonder what he would look like in a 5 round fight, especially
mm,
since he's training with guys like Sean Strickland, whose cardio is incredible, and like Johnny Evelyn, the Bellator middleweight champion. I think that especially with guys that are high volume fighters, they'll crave that 5 round fight. Although Chris Curtis has never had it in his career, I think he would fare very well.
yeah, I agree with you 100%.
And it's I mean it's a big win for Chris Curtis, who shows he's still a huge problem in the middleweight division. And it's going to be interesting to see who they match him up with next. He's a rather undersized middleweight. A lot of the middleweights are 6 feet and up. He's only 5'10". He's as tall as me.
Hmm.
And it's kind of to that point where are his legs at? Sure, there are guys like Kelvin Gastelum who were shorter. He's 5'9", who were shorter than him and had gotten to the title shot. Didn't win, got real close against Izzy. But
Yeah.
it makes me think, since we got so many big middleweights, like imagine Chris Curtis went against Alex Pereira. It's over.
Yeah, no,
So
definitely terrible, terrible.
but anyway, huge win for the extreme couture vet and especially the action man himself, Chris Curtis. Next up, we had maybe one of the best comebacks I've seen in recent memory, with Neil Magny defeating the hometown hero since they were fighting in Toronto, Canada, Mike Malott via TKO. And this fight was all but finished and all but a foregone conclusion that Mike Malott was going to win via unanimous decision. 30-27s across the board, completely destroyed Neil Magny, was landing incredible leg kicks. But what went and happened? Mike Malott let Neil Magny get on top, and especially when you got a crafty veteran, you
Hmm.
cannot make any of those slight mistakes in MMA or boxing,
Yeah.
especially with Romero's last opponent. I think he was
Oh, Barroso. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
Barroso. I mean, I think he was making far too many mistakes and obviously one of the worst stoppages in boxing history. But
Yes.
I think
Horrendous.
there's something to those crafty veterans who have been there and done that so much. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, veterans have that experience. They know they've been in situations throughout their whole career where they've been under pressure. So, and they're able to like kind of distinct between when you're like have that energy and when you're putting on a poker face. I think they're able to kind of tell apart from that. And that's I believe what happened. He put on a poker face, and at the end, the veteran just saw the with his experience what was going on and just took advantage of it.
I mean, if he was putting on a poker face, again, Mike Malott has shown he has decent cardio. But man,
Yes.
that may have been the greatest poker face I've ever seen because it looked like he was ready to kill Neil Magny, even going into the third round. But I mean, he just got reversed and got Neil advanced to mount, and it was like he was glue on him. There was nothing Mike Malott could do. And it was just a violent beatdown. Mind you, I'm a fan of Mike Malott. I think he's great for Canadian MMA, and especially in a budding region like Canada for a lot of those fighters. Sure, they've had great fighters like George St. Pierre, for example. But
Oh yeah,
I
phenomenal
think
fighter.
I just think this was like one of the best comebacks I've ever seen. You never see that anymore. It's all but written once you get halfway through the third round. And all the credit to Neil Magny. I'm not the biggest fan of his. I'll come out and say that right now. He said some pretty weird stuff in interviews, especially alluding to like beating his kids and stuff. So I mean, there's like
Yeah,
stuff like that. But
yeah.
I got to give credit where credit's due, and Neil Magny just did incredible with his resilience in this fight. And is it just me, or do you see these crafty veterans having that extra gear, that thing deep down inside them that allows them to overcome so much adversity?
Absolutely. I mean, they face much adversity throughout their whole careers, and they just want a second chance to be able to prove themselves that they still got it. So, if you have that chance, you have that opportunity to just go after it and take the win, they're gonna take it. And like I said, with their experience, they're gonna see every mistake, and young guys don't really see those small mistakes that they're making because they're still learning. But veterans, on the other hand, they've been there, they've done that. So they know how to handle those different opportunities, those different moments and situations, and just take advantage.
Definitely. And it was an incredible win for Neil Magny. At the end of the day, we can't go without saying that. It was in a vacuum one of the greatest comebacks I've seen in recent MMA. But make no mistake, Mike Malott will be back, and I think this is a great lesson for him. I think this is going to teach him a lot. It's kind of like getting that championship rub in a way, where once
Yeah,
you fight that champion, you are 30% better. You're a lot
yeah,
better having been in there, just experiencing what it's really like to be or go against someone at the top. So I mean, this was the fight that was going to bring Mike Malott into the rankings, and I think this had that type of championship rub, rankings rub, if you will call it that. And
definitely.
yeah, no, it definitely gave off that type of energy.
Yeah,
Next, we had Raquel Pennington, the seasoned veteran, defeating Maeda Bueno Silva via unanimous decision. And this is another one of those instances where a seasoned veteran took advantage of the mistakes that a young budding fighter actually made. Because Bueno Silva was doing very well in the early rounds with her grappling. She had the human backpack on in the first and second round, but as we see a lot of times, once you hold on to that for so long, it gasses you out just as much as anything. And
yeah.
I think Pennington knew and was waiting for that moment where she got gassed. And come the third round, it was over. It was
Mm,
over. I mean, she definitely did well at waiting and sort of waiting for her spot. And that instinct was palpable. It seemed like she was defending the chokes, defending all the attacks that Silva was coming at her with. And even on the feet, I don't think Pennington did that poorly, especially in those first two rounds. And
yeah,
my question to you is when you get to that championship level, especially with, a seasoned veteran like Raquel Pennington, who has been gunning for this title shot, you think that adds more motivation to Pennington, having waited for this shot, having gotten a shot before against Amanda Nunes and losing? What do you think? Do you think this had more to do with her experience, or do you think it had more to do
yeah.
with the
No,
fact that she was hungry?
yeah, no. I mean, definitely. When you've been waiting for an opportunity for so long, I mean, it's only natural to feel that hunger, that desperation to just take after that opportunity and take advantage of it. I mean, it's like being starved to death. You're dying for that one title shot to prove yourself that you're that person. So yeah, I mean, that's usually what happens. You starve for you're hungry to be at the top end. I think that once you get the opportunity, and we've seen time and time again, many fighters just take the opportunity and I mean dominate, really.
And it's been a long wait for Raquel Pennington. Ever since she was in The Ultimate Fighter in 2014, she's been in the UFC for 10 years. She's been fighting the top girls in that division for a decade now. And again, they didn't say this was the most exciting fight either. I disagreed because I think that the way she was defending the chokes was incredibly compelling, and especially the way that she showed that extra gear, she showed that toughness. Because Pennington's one of those fighters where she doesn't have the best striking, doesn't have the best ground game, doesn't have the best raw skill, but the dog in her, ooh, that's hard, man. I mean, it was one of those things where it was the intangibles that really brought her to victory. Who are some of those fighters that remind you of just like being in that sense where even in boxing where they may not have the best defense, they may not have the best knockout power, they may not have the best instinct, but it's the internal that changes it. Who reminds you of that?
Yeah. Man, that's a phenomenal question. You know, when I think of heart, man, that's a good question. I really got to think about it. Let me ask you first, who do you think of? And then I'll give you my answer.
I would say if I had to pick someone who has that dog in him, but maybe not the best tangibles. In boxing, I would think of Andy Ruiz. I mean,
Mm,
especially for what he was able to achieve. Again, like I think the way he overcame adversity in the Joshua fight that everyone loves talking about is is definitely indicative of that perseverance. I mean, you can't not think of the Diaz brothers because they take so many shots en route to submissions or en route to knockouts, and I think they're worth mentioning as well.
yeah, no, I have to agree, especially with the Diaz brothers. Like, I mean, they don't give up. They get bloodied and they just keep going and going. I mean, it's just amazing to see like when you got a fighter like that who's just going and going. I guess when it comes to older fighters, when I think of heart and perseverance, I think of especially the fight between Hagler Hearns.
Mhm.
Phenomenal fight. The 3 rounds of just pure action, but
That may
both
be
of
the
them
greatest
just
first round in
not
history.
exactly both of them not wanting to quit. They both wanted it so bad and they hurt each other, but and even though they were exhausted, they just kept going and going and going. I mean, so I would say those two fighters. It's a bit of an old fight, but just such a classic, iconic fight.
There's this documentary that literally was condensed so appropriately. It showed the timeline for the Four Kings, um, Hagler, Hearns, Sugar Ray Leonard, and then Manos de Piedra, the man.
Mm,
So I mean,
Roberto Duran.
come on, man. I'm just telling you right now, like that I thought that the Duran fights were gonna be my favorite, and then that one showed up just to remind me of what I was missing, and it was I mean, just fantastic. That's why I love this sport. That's why we're in this game, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But anyway, I'll never ever be upset that someone got a title, especially an old head like this, someone who's been there and done that. But one thing that I don't think got mentioned enough, she said like they're asking her how it feels to have finally gotten a title shot and finally gotten the win after 10 years. She's like, I don't know. You don't know? I would have. Oh my god. Oh, if I was that ring announcer, I'd been like, "What do you mean you don't know? What are you talking about? I mean, you. I mean, say what you will about post-fight speeches. Even I mean, fighters obviously been hit in the head. They're exhausted. They're just done
Yeah.
something that they may be in very well be in shock. But you don't know. How do you not know? What do
You
you
know,
think about that, Chino? Does that make you feel some type of way?
yeah, no, this reminds me of Nikola Jokic in the NBA after winning the NBA's title, the championship, the ring, and they asked him, "How do you feel?" Good, just good. Then
Now
he's
we can go
asking,
home.
exactly, now we could go home. That's all he's thinking about, going home. And even in the press conference, he seems very stressed after hearing that there's gonna be a parade afterward. He's like, "A
Yeah.
parade? I'm ready to go home. What do you mean?"
He's like,
So
oh, I gotta go home.
yeah, I find it funny, you've completed something that not anyone in this world ever really completes. This is something that's so rare, and you get asked the question, "How does it feel?" And you're just there like, I don't know. It could have been that she was just shocked. It really could have been that. I mean, I can't really think of anything else because I don't think it's the same in the NBA where you just fought your heart out and you just want to go home. You don't really care about it. So I can't really say it's that. I would just say maybe she was just shocked. That's it.
I'd hope so. I'd hope it's shock because if she still don't know how she feels about it, then I'd have some serious questions as to why she's been here 10 years and why she's been
Yeah.
excellent for 10 years. So I mean, congratulations to Raquel Pennington. I'll lay off the post-fight speech for now. But I had to say something. Anyway,
Yeah.
the fight of the night, one of the greatest middleweight title fights and closest middleweight title fights I've seen, with Dricus du Plessis defeating the fan favorite Sean Strickland via split decision. And all I could say is, what a fight. I mean, that was as close as it gets. And it really makes me think how Sean Strickland would do in boxing because his jab is phenomenal. Would you say
Oh
it's
yeah.
professional caliber for boxing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the way he was able to just accurately pick his shots, even when Dricus was like throwing punches, in the middle of those punches, he was able to catch him with a jab and just stop him right then and there. I mean, his defense too, especially in the earlier rounds, his defense was just on point. He was right there, and the next thing you know, Dricus throws a punch and he's over there. Like it's crazy. The Philly shell that Sean has brought to the world of MMA, I've never seen anything like it, and he uses it so well. I mean, he's able to pick and choose his shots and get out the way or shoulder roll, whatever the case may be. He's brought something almost revolutionary to the sport because nobody's ever seen this be successful in anything but boxing. So I I mean this fight was just amazing. Amazing
I
fight.
I shudder to envision a Sean Strickland with knockout power, with potato levels and knockout power. But at the same time, we wouldn't get the volume fighter that Sean Strickland actually is. And to say this fight was close would be an incredible understatement. 10 of 12 media outlets scored this fight for Strickland, which I mean virtually makes it a 50-50 as to how much you value the takedowns. But at the same time, Strickland outlanded DDP 183 to 140.
Yeah.
And it was a significant difference. And the cut that Strickland had gotten in the corner of his eye was not from a punch. It wasn't from an elbow. It was from a headbutt, and it was an
Yeah.
accidental headbutt. So when you see these pictures of Sean Strickland all bloodied on one side of his face, it's not like DDP did that on purpose. It's because
Hmm.
DDP got a big head and he hit him in the right spot where he got some soft tissue. And what in the
Yeah.
broadcast, it's really hard to see. And given the circumstances at where it came from, it is really hard to see. I don't know if the judges are made aware of that. I don't know if they're actually told that that was an accidental headbutt because there was no stoppage for that actual occurrence. But I think it plays a lot into the decision making. Personally, I had Strickland rounds 1, 2, and 5. I think he did
Hmm.
more than enough in those rounds to beat him. Du Plessis did very well in the middle rounds in 3 and 4, but especially when it comes to that, what are your thoughts when something as simple as like an accidental headbutt could change the entire trajectory of a fight and how it's scored?
Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely very unfortunate because you don't really expect those things, and then now you have blood running in your eyes and you can't really see. And I mean, as not to take away from anything either. I mean, Dricus also had a pretty bad eye. I mean, Strickland just battered him, and his face was looking like a muffin after the fight. So they both had their fair share of moments and of injuries, as for to say. But yeah, no, it really is unfortunate. You can't really do much about it, which really sucks because you can't really close the cut mid-fight. You have 1 minute. The best you can do is rub Vaseline and ice it and hope that the bleeding stops. Which that's up to the corner man or the cup man to really just figure that out. So it does suck, but I do feel like if something like that does happen, the judges should be aware of that and kind of like I don't know. Yeah, that's a great question, but I think they should be aware of it at least so you don't mark it down as, oh my gosh, you got a cut because of is just battering him when that's not really the case. Um, I mean, yeah, and I have to agree with you. I also had Strickland winning rounds 1, 2, and 5. I think round 2 was really the swing round where judges were really, not too sure of who to give it to. I gave the edge to Strickland, but it was really, really close. It could have gone either way. So
Yeah, although DDP did, that was the only round Duplessis actually outstruck Strickland. Mind you, it was by the smallest of margins. But I think that that obviously was a swing round. That was the one where it certainly was up to the judges. But I mean, Strickland still landed the more effective shots. The stuff DDP was landing was not hurting Strickland. It wasn't really affecting him that much. And that, I
Yeah,
mean, I just can't get over the jab he's popping. It's just so effective. So I mean,
yeah,
especially since he fights orthodox, even though he's left-handed, so his jab is his most effective weapon. And I think
yeah,
that's all an incredible calculation by him.
yeah,
But with that being said, congratulations to Duplessis. It was very well done. He landed more strikes and more takedowns than Sean Strickland had ever had in his career. He landed 6 takedowns and didn't do a whole lot with them. Sean did well getting up, but I genuinely think that DDP could be that guy. I just need to see him fight another guy like Izzy. They're really making it known that the next fight for DDP is Israel Adesanya. And I think it's a
yeah,
great matchup. I think it's really going to show whether or not he's going to be able to deal with, a super high level striker and one with better kicks than Sean Strickland. Because I mean, Strickland doesn't throw a whole lot of kicks to begin with, but I
yeah,
think that's going to be a great litmus test to see where he's at and how good he'll be and how long he could stay the middleweight champion. We still have so many
definitely.
contenders like Bo Nickel, who's a budding contender. He's still fighting people on the undercard that no one knows their name, but he is that guy that can mix striking and grappling very well. And it'd be really interesting to see how DDP does against another wrestler. For
Hmm.
example. So I think Duplessis did incredible, and especially for what Strickland is known for, which is not getting hit. He hit him more times than he ever had, and he landed more takedowns as well. So I think if in a vacuum, or should I say, based on different perceptions, I think people would say that it was an underwhelming performance. But in a vacuum, I'd say Duplessis did very well, and
Yeah.
it'll be really interesting to see if they run this back. I think they should, but that's up for debate.
Hmm.
As we had mentioned, we would like to talk a little bit about some recent fights that were announced. Chino, take it away.
Yeah. Number one, Teofimo Lopez and Jermaine Ortiz. Oh my gosh, that fight is such a good fight. I mean, you have Teofimo Lopez coming off of a massive, massive win. And Ortiz coming off of a loss, unfortunately, but many people had him win against Lomachenko. People thought that was a robbery. So it is really interesting. I think this is going to be an action-packed fight. I think we've seen Teofimo Lopez in those action-packed fight. I mean, Cambosis Jr., that fight was just such a phenomenal fight, full of knockdowns, the blood, the bruising, all of the above. So I think we're going to see a similar fight. I think Ortiz can really stand in there and bang, and so can Teofimo. So it's gonna be, I don't know. I'd give the edge to Teofimo though. I think that he's gonna be able to have a better punch output, and he's really accurate as well, and he has power. I mean, this guy is just such an entertaining fighter. A lot of people don't like him because he does talk a bit, but besides that, I mean, when you just look at how he fights, he has such a beautiful style of fighting where he's just able to kind of get in the pocket, throw his punches, and just smoothly get out the way, take an angle. I mean, this guy is just such a different fighter. I think he poses many problems to the whole division and the top fighters like Devin Haney, Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia, Pitbull Cruz, Romero. I mean, this guy, people don't give him enough credit for the fighter that he is. But I think that Teofimo is going to be um one of those guys that can possibly almost, I mean, take over everyone. So what do you think about that?
Teofimo Lopez is a certified goer. He goes for it, and especially that Cambosos fight was indicative of his entire style and his entire vibe. I would agree that against Jermaine Ortiz, he does have the advantage, especially since I mean I think he's fought the better caliber of fighters, and I think that's going to be the difference maker. Again, it goes into the experience that we were talking about earlier, but I do completely agree. When it comes to the grand scheme of that whole division, there it's one of the most loaded in all of boxing, but you cannot count out the guy that goes for it like Tiafimo does. And say what you will about how he talks, you're going to get in there and you're going to get into a fist fight with whoever you're talking to. It doesn't matter what you say. I mean, given certain circumstances, you don't want no one coming after you like
Yeah.
Covington. But at the same time,
Yeah. Yeah.
I I don't I never see the problem in that. I never see that as an issue because at the end of the day, if you're going to get into a ring and you're going to show you're going to go do the man dance, as Sean Strickland likes to put it, say whatever you want, get into their head, make that an intangible victory for you, get them upset, make them fight emotional so you can capitalize on that. I never see the problem with that in all of boxing, and I think though Lopez talks, who doesn't love a talker?
I agree, 100%. And speaking about talking and people that love to talk trash, Rolly Romero versus Isaac Pitbull Cruz. This fight, man, so much confusion behind the whole thing
Mhm.
because you had one moment Ryan Garcia is gonna fight Devin Haney and Rolly is calling out Ryan Garcia. The next moment, Ryan Garcia is saying, "Oh, actually, I'm gonna fight Rolly Romero because this fight holds more views and attention, and this way it'll build up the Devin Haney fight even better." And then all of a sudden, Romero is announced to be fighting Isaac Pitbull Cruz. So and remember, keep in mind, Cruz is the guy that Ryan said, "Oh no, this guy is nothing to me. I'm not even gonna think about him. I'm not even gonna put him in the same sentence as me." So now Ryan Garcia is left looking for an opponent. Ryan Garcia versus Oscar De La Hoya. De La Hoya announced that he's gonna be fighting. I don't remember who it was. I believe it was another Ortiz, but yeah, Ryan Garcia said, no, that's not going to be happening. And then he started tweeting out the whole, oh, Ryan Garcia versus De La Hoya at this point. So there's so much confusion and problems behind this fight. But now we know for sure that Rolly Romero will be facing Isaac Pitbull Cruz as the co-main event for Thurman versus Tim Tszyu. I think this already is such a phenomenal card. I mean, these two guys, Keith Thurman coming off of such a huge layoff. How many days has it been, this layoff?
It's been over 800 days at this point.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been quite a while.
That's like two and three
And
quarter years. Like, come on now.
Yeah, yeah. And Tim Tszyu being the boogeyman of this division, this guy has so much power. His punch output is just unlike any other. And yeah, this guy is terrifying. And Keith Thurman is fighting really that guy right now. I think that Tim Tszyu is going to be the one to possibly become undisputed in that division. I mean, he's next up for the belt, or well, he has a belt right now, and I think we'll really see how this whole thing plays out. But let's start off with Rolly Romero and Isaac Pitbull Cruz. What are your thoughts on this fight?
I mean, I think it's a great fight in a vacuum, but I'm very glad you mentioned Ryan Garcia because I do recall them attempting to book Romero versus Garcia. And I think, as you mentioned, it has a lot to do with this whole feud that Garcia has going against him with Oscar De La Hoya. And I don't know why. Gonna be honest, I know this is not necessarily tied to the fight that is at hand, but why is Ryan Garcia even putting Devin Haney's name in his mouth? He couldn't beat Pitbull Cruz, and I stand by that opinion. I think Pitbull Cruz will whoop him, but I mean, that's just that's neither here nor there at this point. I think
Yeah,
Romero versus Cruz is an incredible fight to make. And I think Isak is going to have a little bit of an easier time closing range, even if you were fighting Ryan Garcia. But I mean, this dude's as tough as it gets in the entire division. And you never count
yeah,
those dudes out. I mean, they I think Pitbull's an incredibly fitting nickname because he gives off that sort of vibe. And I think given everything that we've seen from him and given his status in the division, this could be an opportunity for Romero to sort of come back when a lot of people may have thought, I mean, especially with Barroso, um, where he just got lucky, where he was losing that fight and the ref stepped in at the wrong time. I think this could be a potential narrative shift for Rolly Romero. And I think this is an opportunity he's probably been gunning for a minute because if it wasn't going to be Ryan Garcia, it was going to be another top contender. And
yep,
I think this is a great fight for him. I think both of these guys have an opportunity to really do something good and potentially win. I mean, obviously someone's gonna win, but I mean, each one has potential to beat the other. But I'm such a big fan of Isaac Cruz. I mean, I think he may do very well in this fight. Are you frozen? Oh.
All right, there we go. We lost you for a second there.
Oh shoot. Okay. You
All
still frozen
right,
on my. All
now
right,
we're
there you
back.
are.
Everything
There
good.
you are.
I
Oh
did. I
shoot. Okay, I
believe
was
last.
like,
Yeah.
Chino. But no. When it comes to Keith Thurman, especially with 800 days off, what type of difference do you think that's going to make?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's it's going to be interesting to see how he goes into the ring and if he's able to kind of stand in there, especially with Tim Tszyu, who's quite a bit of a power puncher, and he's a pressure fighter too. He's gonna come at you, and we've seen Keith Thurman get hit to the body and get injured, and this all happened after first Pacquiao, and then he went on to fight Barrios, and again got hurt to the body. So I think that him staying unactive is gonna play such a huge role in this fight because Tim Tszyu has been active and he's been demolishing his opponents. So I can totally see. I honestly think that Keith Thurman is kind of over the hill at this point, and I think that Tim Tszyu, like I said, is the boogeyman, that one guy in the division that nobody wants to fight. I see Tim Tszyu honestly just demolishing and finishing Keith Thurman once and for all. I think after this, Keith Thurman is probably going to retire, and I think he should. It seems to me that he doesn't have that same fire that he once had a couple years ago, and he's not even really in the talks anymore of these top guys being able to kind of just I don't know these champion made guys. Back a couple years ago, I mean, before he fought Pacquiao, Keith Thurman was one of those guys that everybody feared, and then now you don't really hear Keith Thurman anymore. If anything, people are just telling him to retire. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen with this fight. I think he's going to be retired, and I think that, um, unfortunately, well, I don't know. That's how I see it. I think he's probably going to get knocked out. Um, maybe in I'd say maybe mid rounds, 5 to 8. That's usually where it happens. I think Tim Tszyu is going to take the first couple of rounds to kind of just analyze Keith Thurman, see what makes him flinch, and see what mistakes he makes, and then once he figures them out, it's just going to be good night.
And I'm going to be paying attention from rounds 5 through 8 because your pick with Devin Haney was on point. It was perfect.
Yep.
You literally nailed it. So,
Yep.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. Keith Thurman's over the hill at this point, and that long of a layoff for a fighter is already such a big um, obstacle they're going to have to overcome for the ring rust. But I think it's even worse when you're fighting that dude, and I think Tim Tszyu might be that dude in that division. And I don't see Keith Thurman really returning to relevance. Again, I mean, we could be surprised. Maybe he's been working in silence this whole time. I doubt it, but I think I mean, you can never count a guy like that out. But I would agree. If I had to make a prediction for this fight, I would definitely say Tim Tszyu by knockout.
Yeah, definitely. And to go back to the Pitbull Cruz fight, and Rolly Romero, I didn't get to give my input on that, but I honestly think that Isaac Cruz is probably going to be knocking out Rolly Romero just because, I mean, we saw in the Barroso fight, Rolly doesn't really handle pressure well, and he makes a lot of mistakes, as we also saw in the Gervonta Davis fight. He did have some success going forward against Gervonta Davis, but just so many crucial mistakes, which Gervonta Davis capitalized on, and he was able to, I mean, in the end the fight by knockout. And Barroso even knocked down Rolly too. So, Rolly, although he started late and I give him props to being a world champion, I do think that he has been spoon-fed opponents up until the Gervonta Davis fight, and then Barroso being the horrible cherry pick gone wrong. Um, yeah, he just makes too many mistakes, and Isaac Pitbull Cruz just being the guy that just bulldozes through every one of his opponents. And even though he had quite a bit of a lackluster, what is it called? Lackluster performance this past fight, against a guy who really didn't look too well in the ring. He seemed like quite an amateur. I thought Isak was gonna take him out the ring, but unfortunately he didn't. But yeah, Isak just has that power and that pressure to kind of bulldoze anyone. And Rolly doesn't deal very well with pressure. He doesn't really fight well on the back foot. So I believe that Isak is gonna probably take him out. I'll give Rolly till around 6 to 9 rounds. Around that area is where I think Isak's gonna have success, and I definitely see Isak landing a knockdown in the early rounds as well. And yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. And speaking of, the boxers that we've had, the boxers that we've had the pleasure of talking to on this channel, our main man, Alan Navarro, especially since, Intercontinental champion, Latin American champion. Once this guy announces a fight, are you prepared for this interview again, Chino?
absolutely. I mean, this guy is one of my favorite guys to talk to. You guys know he's had such a fascinating story, such a compelling story. One that even I felt quite emotional just hearing all of that. I related to him very well, and I can't say much. I can't disclose much to everybody, but what I can say is stay tuned because he has some big news coming out this year, and I believe this year is going to be a huge breakthrough for Allen. So everybody that's watching, be on the lookout for Allen Navarro because El Niño de Oro, he's coming to take over America. He's coming to take over the world, and I definitely see many huge things going well for him this year. So everyone, stay tuned.
Sir, he's certainly got it. And with another former guest of the show, Justin Valoria, we're gonna stay tuned with his career as well. Again, he's also undefeated. He's also in the super featherweight division, and he's real
Yep,
good too. He's got what it takes. Both these guys got what it takes, and we're definitely gonna start wrapping it up with these interviews. And as soon as these guys announce fights, we're gonna have something big. We're gonna do it and do it right. Anyway,
definitely.
thank you all so much for tuning in to Sling and Leather. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons for more of Southern California's official combat sports show. And make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, where the links will be in the description below. Remember to protect yourself at all times, and then we will see you guys in the next one.
Peace.